Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the May meeting of the Metropolitan Transportation Authority Board. Mr. Morella, do we have any public speakers?
We have 7 and perhaps 8 speakers today, Mr. Chairman, one on the way. We would ask all of our speakers to try to observe or stay in the range of our time limit so that we can treat everyone equally. The first speaker is Anthony Fodiatis. He'll be followed by Veronica Vanterpool. Oh, I don't think Mr. Fodiatis is here yet, so our first speaker will be Veronica Vanterpool, to be followed by Omar Vera. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Veronica Vanterpool. I'm the Executive Director of Tri-State Transportation Campaign. Finally, 15 months late, we have an approved capital program, and we're delighted that this program has been approved and is moving forward. There's some key projects in there that we are glad to see are advancing. We know that the agency has been struggling to meet a lot of the deadlines, and some of the projects have certainly been in question, so we're glad to see that this has moved forward. The city and the state have made significant pledges to this capital program, and moving forward, we need to be diligent in ensuring that those pledges are indeed met. There's no new money in the existing state budget for the capital program, and we need to make sure that those pledges, though significant, are met. Yesterday began the scoping sessions for the Long Island Third Track project. It's a very much needed project. We're very supportive of it. Tri-State has been in support of it since 2004 when we formed a Third Track coalition, and there is support for this project. I was at the New Hyde Park hearing yesterday, and there is a good deal of community concern, many of it legitimate, and that certainly needs to be addressed moving forward. We need to ensure that this public process is meaningful. That certainly goes beyond just an open house and some hearings, which are necessary and needed steps, but that is modeled after the Tappan Zee Bridge outreach process, which had more than 700 meetings with schools and residents and other stakeholders who are not the usual suspects. My last and final point is, 11 months ago, Mayor de Blasio put forth 3 candidates for the MTA Board. These are very qualified individuals. Many of them have spent a good deal of time advocating for the rider, for large constituencies, for the customer, but making sure that there's balance in funding. These individuals have put equity and sustainability at the forefront of their advocacy. There are 9 session days left. The state legislature convenes or recesses June 17th. There are 9 session days left. If you're a New York City Council member, you should be at the forefront asking for these nominees to be approved. If you are a New York State Assembly member or senator who represents New York City, this should be a key priority for you. There should be no vacancies on this board, whether you're a city appointee, a state appointee. This 8.5 million people a day rely on this system. There should be a full slate of members here representing the rider public and the larger constituency. So again, please make this a priority if you're representing New York City. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anthony Fodiatis, please. I'm told is here. Okay. Thank you, Omar.
Good morning, honorable board members. My name is Anthony Fodiatis. I'm here today representing Smart Local 137. The mission of Sheet Metal Workers International Local Union number 137 is to organize, educate, and represent all workers in our craft, and to improve benefits, wages, and safe working conditions. SMART is working in coalition with Jobs to Move America to ensure the MTA's upcoming $3.2 billion purchase of subway cars creates good manufacturing jobs for our region. Excuse me, I'm a little bit under the weather, but we ask that the MTA support long-term career path jobs for workers, especially for those historically excluded from the industry. We ask that the MTA incentivize investments in pre-apprenticeship and workforce training programs and strong job pipelines that ensure the success of workers facing multiple and significant barriers to employment by adopting the U.S. employment plan. As a native New Yorker, I feel our tax dollars should ensure this money creates good family-sustaining American jobs. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Now we'll hear from Omar Vera, and Mr. Vera will be followed by Arthur Piccolo.
Good morning, MTA board members. My name's Omar Vera, and I'm a subway activist. And I'm coming here to speak once more in support of the restoration of W train service ahead of the opening of Phase 1 of the 2nd Avenue subway due by the end of the year. This service is needed because, like I said, New Yorkers want it. I want it. I miss it a lot. It's 6 years is long enough for the missing in action. And so restoring W train service will also restore an express service in Manhattan, which is needed because, like I say, flow of passengers will need it as, in order to get to Brooklyn or to Queens more quickly from Manhattan. And I'm really excited about this. Most people are really excited about this. New York is really excited about this. Thank you so much. And I thank everybody here. And the one other topic I'd like to discuss is the L train shutdown. I was originally in favor of the partial shutdown, but after seeing the video that explained the importance of this, I'm in favor of a full shutdown for a year and a half, just to to improve the L train tunnels and to ensure that disasters like Sandy will be much more minimal in the future. So I thank everybody for that. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you everybody else here. And I especially thank Mr. Albert here, the board member, because he was the one who pushed for the W train restoration. Thank you, sir, and thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Vera. Arthur Piccolo will be followed by Malika Connor.
Members of the board, the governor has just approved a $27 billion improvement program. The basic problem with the subway system is an archaic route structure. I think there is a dramatically simple solution that will revolutionize the existing system. I haven't found any flaws in the concept. Anybody who I've mentioned it to hasn't found any flaws in the system, in the proposal, which is to create a network of new switching stations at strategic points on every line where trains can be readily rerouted. I get on the IRT, Grand Army Plaza Station, every morning, waiting to go to Manhattan, and I watch train after train, each one increasingly empty, going in the other direction, all the way to the end of the line in Brooklyn before turning around. To me, having a switching point, a full switching point, somewhere near Franklin Avenue, would dramatically increase that line. I didn't try to make a real map, but to make a point, I made 18 X's here that points on the system where over the next 5 to 10 years that I believe at a lower cost than anything else you could do, that you could dramatically create twice as many, 3 times as many routes that are completely flexible, have the secondary benefit of being able to more easily reroute trains around stalled trains, also allow for controllers to make changes in routes for any reason at any time of day, for whatever the reason. By tomorrow morning, I'm sure the MTA executives have enough information in their databases that they could have an email to each of you suggesting points in the system where these switching points should be put and the overall cost. Even if it cost $1 billion to do this, it would be far more effective than anything else. We would have a brand new subway system for the 21st century. I left a one-page statement for all of you. I hope you'll consider this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Piccolo. Malika Connor, to be followed by Harold Stolper.
Good morning. My name is Malika Connor, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Jobs to Move America Coalition. Our coalition unites around the common belief that our public transportation investments should go toward purchasing high-quality, safe vehicles, and that they should also result in good jobs, workforce development and training programs, and opportunities for people historically underrepresented in the transportation manufacturing industry. We want to commend the MTA on the success of economic development programs like Built in New York, which have helped attract major railcar and bus manufacturers to the state of New York. It is also important to recognize, though, that much more must be done. The transportation manufacturing workforce is overwhelmingly white, male, and aging, and as these workers retire, manufacturing companies are struggling to find skilled workers to find those jobs. We must continue to build upon the accomplishments of the MTA by ensuring that our public transportation investments result in good jobs, workforce development, and meaningful opportunities for our communities. We ask for the MTA's leadership and call on our honorable board members to support quality job creation and the retention of existing American jobs by adopting the U.S. employment plan on the upcoming R211 subway procurement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Stolper, followed by Pedro Valdez Rivera.
Morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Harold Stolper. I'm the Senior Labor Economist at the Community Service Society. We're an organization that works to promote upward mobility for low-income New Yorkers. I'm speaking on behalf of our CEO, David Jones. Paths to good living wage jobs are the first step to getting ahead. One of the biggest barriers to gainful employment is a lack of skills and experience. Lack of opportunity to develop these skills and experience keeps the most economically disadvantaged workers disconnected from the labor force, especially formerly incarcerated and public benefits recipients who are disproportionately Black and Hispanic. By incorporating the U.S. employment plan in its railcar RFP, the MTA can leverage public investment to incentivize bidders to create living wage jobs, job training programs, and links to union apprenticeships that can help disadvantaged workers develop the skills and experience they need to get a foothold in the labor market. The need for these jobs is greater than ever. Blacks and Hispanics continue to face the highest unemployment rates and lowest labor force participation rates in New York City. For blacks without a college degree, the unemployment rate still exceeds 12%. Black and Hispanic workers are also now underrepresented in the manufacturing sector, jobs that tend to be higher wage career pipeline jobs. In the manufacturing sector, workers throughout the state without a college degree earn about $4 more, that's the median wage, than in other sectors. So to conclude, is our view that by incorporating the U.S. employment plan into the railcar proposal evaluation criteria, the MTA can help generate good manufacturing jobs for those among us who face the greatest barriers to gainful employment and help develop a skilled local workforce to expand our region's aging infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stolper. Pedro Valdez Rivera. He'll be followed by our final speaker, William Henderson.
Good morning, Tom Pendergast, Chairman, MTA Board. My name is Pedro Valdez Rivera Jr., and I'm a freelancer for Bed-Stuy. And I would like to congratulate upon the MTA on restoring the double trade service and getting accelerate work before the first phase of the Second Avenue subway, and in particular the getting the word out to the members of the public like myself, where I'm an L-Train rider also on the L-Train, the proposals for what you do with the L-Train shutdown on the Canarsie Tube under the East River. My main testimony is about what I report to all you guys about. Basically, last May you allowed us, you have some funds to do a study for the Rockaway Beach branch, which you're going to do starting right now all the way, and you get the results until next year, the end of the next year's legislative session of Albany. In that part of Queens, along the line, the Rockaway Beach branch, there's going to be a couple of years or so, there's going to be a lot of development. Economic, residential, commercial development, and even particular in the Rockaways, eastern half of the Rockaways, where there's a big influx of tourism and residential development in the next couple of years to a few decades or so. So for that study, it needs to be a partial, it not be one-sided, it needs to be address all the concerns. And to conclude, it needs to address all the concerns for the people who are impacted by the line and how it's beneficial to all the commuters along the branch. You know, it goes from the A train, the Rockaway Boulevard, all the way to Regal Park. It can be done via subway, it can be done via one-line railroad, or everything that connects to JFK Airport. I would like to thank the MTA for doing that study and hope you do release it next year. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our final speaker, William Henderson.
Good morning. I'm Bill Henderson. I'm the Executive Director of PCAC. We want to add our voice to the relief at the capital program being deemed to be approved, and also the need to hold the city and state to their commitments on this. If you were at the LIR committee or, in fact, a number of public hearings and meetings over the last 2 decades, you know that we're in support of the third track improvements, the mainline improvements on the LIRR. We'll be at the scoping meeting this evening to support it, and we hope the board supports it as well. We also want to add to the call for the state senate to consider and confirm the city nominees to the board. There are voices that need to be heard at the board table, and they're not being heard right now. Also, one of the things I wanted to bring up with a brief comment is the timely availability of board and committee materials. For this board cycle, agenda books weren't available to the public on MTA Info until late Friday for the Monday committee meetings. In essence, giving the public 0 business days to review the agendas and materials for each of the committees. We recognize that there's many things going on at the MTA, there's many initiatives underway, but the public unavailability of materials until near or after the close of business on the Friday prior to committee meetings seems to have become normal operating procedure. And we think that this needs to be corrected. After all, you ask public speakers at the beginning of each meeting to address the topics that will be considered in that meeting. We generally seek to do this, but not knowing what will be considered makes complying with this rule difficult for potential public speakers. And I just think it's good order and a good way of business to get your agenda out in advance so people can look at it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Morello. Good morning, everyone, again. I'd like to start today with some great news for 2 of our operating agencies. Both New York City Transit and Metro North have earned the Transportation Security Administration's Gold Standard Award for 2015. This award honors transportation agencies with exceptional security programs. The Gold Standard is the highest rating offered through the TSA's base program known as the Baseline Assessment for Security Enhancement. Both New York City Transit and Metro North are extremely honored to be recognized by the TSA, and we're proud to have TSA representatives on hand to help us give out the awards. Joining us today is Sonia Proctor, TSA's Service Director, and she's going to help us give out the awards.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Chief Executive Officer Tom Pendergrass, Vice Chairman Ferrer, members of the board, agency presidents, and distinguished guests. My name is Sonia Proctor. I'm with the Transportation Security Administration, and I'm responsible for the Surface Division at TSA. So in that capacity, I'm responsible for ensuring the security of all modes of surface transportation within the United States. Nothing to do with aviation. On behalf of our administrator, Mr. Peter Neffinger, I'm here today to thank you for giving me the opportunity to publicly recognize everyone here at MTA for all that you are doing to secure your transportation network, one of the largest transportation networks in our nation. Today, I am extremely privileged to acknowledge the hard work and the dedicated professionals at Metro North Railroad and New York City Transit by presenting the Transportation Security Administration's Gold Standard Award in recognition of achieving security excellence as evidenced from your scores on your most recent Baseline Assessment for Security Enhancement review, which occurred in 2015. This award is the highest level of recognition we give to surface transportation entities for their corporate security standards. The TSA's base program is designed to establish a security standard for individual system security programs and to track their progress. This is a voluntary program, and it is a comprehensive review of a transit agency's security program over 17 security fundamentals that have been identified by both the transit community and TSA as essential for a sound transit security program. The base assessment is aimed at meeting the requirements in the implementing recommendations of the 9/11 Commission Act of 2007 Security Assessment Section. And that's the section that directs TSA to identify critical assets, infrastructure, and systems and their vulnerabilities, and assist bus and public transportation authorities in addressing those areas through their security programs. Chairman Pendergrass, you should be extremely proud of the accomplishments your very competent staff has achieved. It speaks to your leadership in making transit security a top priority within your organization, as well as the commitment demonstrated by President Giletti of Metro North and President Ronnie Hakem of New York City Transit and Security Director Ray Diaz in achieving this important goal. As all good leaders know, the people who deserve the true thanks for a job well done are those who are devoted to the mission and who persevere on our behalf. So to MTA Police Chief Michael Cohn, Metro North Security Director Sean Ryan, Metro North Chief Security Officer Michael Metz, New York City Transit Vice President of Security Owen Monaghan, New York City Transit Security Analyst Catherine Flandina, thank you for your faithful contributions toward enhancing your agency's security program. And I'd like to express my sincere gratitude to the folks who really are the boots on the ground. We know that they're the folks that get the work done, and they deserve so much of the credit today for making our vision of a secure MTA transportation system a reality. So before I ask a few folks to join me here presenting the awards, I would like to take a moment to recognize and express my admiration to the MTA for expanding your If You See Something, Say Something campaign to the New Yorkers keeping New York safe, and to give credit for recognizing how important a role your customers play in keeping your system secure. And this demonstrates that you and your system have been a role model for others, including DHS, to follow. As we know, DHS has, with the MTA's approval, adopted the If You See Something, Say Something slogan, and I think you now find it all over the country, thanks to MTA. So I'm pleased to ask Ray Diaz, Mike Cohn, Sean Ryan, Owen Monaghan, and representing TSA's Regional Director, Marissa Mayola, is the Assistant Director, Jim Fitzgerald, to join me presenting TSA's Gold Standard Award to Kathy Rinaldi, representing President Joe Giletti, and to President Ronnie Hakem from New York Transit. Please. So, Ms. Hakem, we have the Gold Standard Award here. It reads, Transportation Security Administration Gold Standard Award, presented to Metropolitan Transportation Authority, New York City Transit, New York City, New York, for achieving the highest standard of excellence in security, baseline assessment, security enhancement, BASE Program 2016. Thank you so much. And we have our Gold Standard Award for Metropolitan Transit Authority, Metro North Railroad, for achieving the highest standard of excellence in security, baseline assessment, security enhancement, BASE Program 2016 from the Transportation Security Administration. So, Mr. Chairman, thank you so much for this opportunity, and just let me express my my appreciation for all that you've done and for the very absolute and clear commitment that you've made to securing the MTA. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Proctor, and we certainly appreciate the partnership we have with TSA. We have more good news today. Somewhere the sun is shining, somewhere a band is playing, and we have a capital program. I'm sure you've now heard what occurred yesterday, but the state's Capital Program Review Board has approved our 2015 through 19 capital program. The passage of this program marks the single largest investment in the MTA's infrastructure in its history and sets the stage for 5 years' worth of vital investments to renew, enhance, and expand our network. Before we close the chapter in this chapter in our history, I want to take a moment to extend our thanks and appreciation on behalf of the entire MTA to some key individuals and groups who were responsible for helping us achieve it. First, I want to thank Governor Cuomo for his leadership, his vision, and his determined efforts to secure this critical funding. I've said many times I came back to New York because it's one of the few places that gets it right and gets the funding. It becomes more challenging every time, and without leadership from the governor, it would have been almost impossible to be able to get us here. So I want to thank him. I also want to thank all on the board who advocated for this program, who stood up for the MTA and for our region, and others who were partners in that effort. We appreciate Senate Majority Leader Flanagan, Speaker Hasty, and their members for recognizing that public transport is the backbone and lifeline of the region's economy. And on a personal note, I want to thank every member of the MTA family who worked so hard to envision this program, build this program, and get it approved. It's gotten more difficult every time. The challenges get more daunting, but we get there. The reason I came back to the MTA is because of the fact that we get it right. I couldn't be prouder of our region for proving me right, and I can't wait to get started on these fantastic new projects and the challenges they bring, which will mean a much better transportation system for the 8.7 million people who use the system on a daily basis. Last item I'd like to cover is the Park Avenue Viaduct. Those of you that know, those of you that ride Metro North or pay attention, we had a significant incident last week on the Metro North Railroad. And first I want to say how proud I am of the team at Metro North who worked tirelessly to try to address the issues resulting from that incident, minimize their impact, get service restored, and get people home on the night of the incident and back the next day. Our tracks were destroyed, the Park Avenue Viaduct was badly damaged, but we had alternate service plans ready. We implemented these plans as soon as the fire erupted on Tuesday evening. Work teams were on the scene immediately, and for 2.5 days they worked nonstop to restore temporary service, and by Friday morning they had restored full service. It's one element of our system that does not have the full level of redundancy and resiliency that we'd like it to have, and that's why we're really glad to have the governor's support for Metro North access to Penn Station, which would help address that issue. In the fire's aftermath, New Yorkers are asking the right questions, as are we. People want to know who is responsible for inspecting the area beneath elevated structures, and especially the business and homes adjacent to them. To put it simply, the MTA is responsible for inspecting its elevated structures and for ensuring their safety and reliability. In fact, there are regulations at a state and federal level for all elevated structures to be inspected on an annual basis. We're also responsible for ensuring that our leaseholders are in compliance with the terms of any leases we have, including safety considerations. The garden center under the Park Avenue Viaduct where the fire started was not one of our leaseholders, it was a leaseholder for the city of New York. In light of this incident, however, I've directed our inspection teams to not only continue inspecting our elevated structures and leaseholders, but to conduct separate reviews and inspections of any leased properties either under or adjacent to our elevated structures. We have no choice but to be able to do that. The minutes of last month's meeting have been distributed to all members. I'd like to have a motion on those minutes. Second, any comments or questions regarding them or revisions? All in favor? Aye. Mr. Ferrer chaired this month's Finance Committee meeting. Mr. Ferrer.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. The Finance Committee met on Monday. There are 4 procurement actions this month in the total amount of $71 million. There are no non-competitive procurements. There are 4 competitive procurements totaling $71 million. The committee recommends these procurements, and I move them.
Second, any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye. There are no ratifications. There are 5 action real estate items from the committee this month. The items are described on pages 42 through 55 in the board book distributed for this meeting. The committee recommends these real estate items, and I move them.
Second, any comments or questions on the real estate items? All in favor?
Aye. And that concludes the report. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Ferrer chaired the Committee on New York City Transit.
Transit and Bus Committee met, Mr. Chairman, also on Monday. There is one action item for board approval. This action item approves the recommended service plan for Phase 1 of the 2nd Avenue subway. The recommended service plan restores the W service and revises the N and Q services upon completion of Phase 1 of the 2nd Avenue subway, currently anticipated in late 2016. The committee recommends this action item, and I move it.
Second, any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye. There are 10 procurement actions this month in the total amount of $45 million. There are 3 non-competitive procurements totaling $1 million for New York City Transit, and that's described on pages 72 through 75 of the board book. The committee recommends these procurements, and I move them.
Second, any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye. There are 5 competitive procurements totaling $41.1 million for New York City Transit on pages 76 to 81 of the board book. The committee recommends these procurements, and I move them.
Second, any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye. And there are 2 ratifications totaling $2.9 million. One for New York City Transit for $800,000 and one for MTA Capital Construction for $2.1 million, and that's described on pages 82 through 85 of the board book. The committee recommends these procurements, and I move them.
Second, any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye. And that, Mr. Chairman, concludes the Transit and Bus Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Ferrer. Mr. Sador, the Metro North Committee report.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. The Metro North Committee met this month and reports the following. There are 6 procurement items in a total amount of $24.8 million. There is 1 non-competitive procurement in a total amount of $664,000. The committee recommends this procurement, and I move it.
Second, any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
There are 5 competitive procurements in the amount of $24 million. The committee recommends these procurements, and I move them.
Second, any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
There are no ratification, and this concludes the Metro North Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Sador. Mr. Pally, the Long Island Committee report.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. The Long Island Railroad Committee met this month. I report the following. There are 8 procurement items in the amount of $168 million. There are 2 non-competitive procurements for the Long Island Railroad in the total amount of $1.7 million. The committee recommends these procurements, and I move them.
Second. Any comments or questions? All in favor? Aye.
There are 5 competitive procurements. There are 4 competitive procurements for Long Island Railroad in the total amount of $161 million. This includes the walk-in procurement distributed and voted on at the committee meeting. There is 1 competitive procurement for MTA Capital Construction for $4 million. The committee recommends these procurements, and I move them.
Second, any comments or questions? All in favor? Aye.
There is 1 ratification for MTA Capital Construction in the total amount of $800,000. The committee recommends this procurement, and I move it.
Second, any comments or questions? All in favor? Aye.
This concludes the report of the Long Island Railroad Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Pally. Mr. Capelli, the Bridges and Tunnels Committee report, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Bridges and Tunnels Committee met this month. There are 2 procurement actions this month in the total amount of $255.2 million. There are no non-competitive procurements. There are 2 competitive procurements in the total amount of $255.2 million. The committee members who were present at the committee meeting considered and voted in favor of the action items, although a quorum was not present for the vote. Therefore, I move the board approve these procurement items.
Second.
Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
There are no ratification. This concludes Bridges and Tunnels Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Capelli. I think we need to go back to the Long Island Railroad Committee for a procurement item. Mr. Pally?
Yes. On page 101 of the board book, the committee approved a project labor agreement relating to the construction of the 2nd track, and I move that action item.
Second.
Any comments or questions regarding that procurement? All in favor?
Aye. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That concludes all the business of the operating committees, and it concludes the business for today's board meeting. May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Second. All in favor? Aye. Meeting is adjourned. I think we're going to get started. Good morning, everyone.
All right. How long has the MTA been studying the proposed F-train express route, and would the MTA consider revising it to not skip over some of the neighborhoods that elected officials say will be hit the hardest by F-express service?
I'm not exactly sure how long. I think the study was started over a year ago. It was looked at pretty exhaustively, and we've now, published the results of that. And it's pretty exhaustive. So I think it speaks for itself. It is one of these cases, though, where there are benefiters and disbenefiters. In some cases, one is far outweighs the other, but this is almost split right down the middle.
Hi, good morning.
Morning.
So, looking at the Second Avenue subway timetables for the Q train, how does the MTA justify 8-minute headways in the morning rush hour when, and related, as a second question, how is that going to impact the ability for the MTA to attract Lexington line riders to make the switch over the Q train if they're going to be waiting that long?
Well, first of all, the decision with respect to what the frequency of train service is made based on estimates of what ridership's going to be on opening day. There's a pretty strong belief that there will be a very robust level of ridership. In many systems that new routes are established, that grows relatively slowly, but we've got some pent-up demand. And we will watch it very closely. If it's oversubscribed and people come to it, we will have to change the service, and we will. But that's what the projections are right now.
The 200,000 daily riders that are estimated to go on the Q train, did you make those projections with those headways baked in, or was it this is what you expect and this is what the headways will need to be?
I began my career in operations planning, so I understand how the schedules are put together based on demand. And so it's based on projected demand. It doesn't have the benefit of actual ridership numbers, which is what we do for the rest of the system. So empirical numbers tell us what the service needs to be. So those are the projections as we expect them to be. We expect them to be very robust on day one. I'm pretty clear with the first answer, and the second answer is the same. So we believe that's the level of ridership, and if demand is greater, we will change the service accordingly and reduce the headway.
Hey, could you walk us through the last stage of negotiations leading up to the passage of the capital plan, and in exchange for not having the plan vetoed as the 30-day window expired, did the MTA agree to any service changes or studies or changes to the capital plan or reshuffling or anything down the road in exchange for not having it vetoed?
This particular process was a little bit more extended than others, but it was the usual process where the plan had to be revised a couple times, then resubmitted, and then there's discussions with respect to what's in the plan and what needs to be done, and this followed that course. And then we got to a point where, for lack of a better phrase, the clock ran out and the plan was approved.
But in the days leading up to the window of the 30-day period, were there any last-minute
There are ongoing
agreements?
conversations at the front end of the process. If you remember, there were discussions regarding, what's in for Second Avenue, what does that mean, how fast will that project be done, how will we advance it. There's similar questions about projects that are in there, station renovations and things like that. So in total, those conversations occurred over a period of time. And I wouldn't focus on the last 30 days per se as being anything different than, the time leading up to it.
So there's nothing that preceded, not having.
The ongoing discussions that normally occur. I mean, a capital program happens once every 5 years. And there are things that are, I mean, if you watch the dialogue on Second Avenue, it was clear. We had one proposal in the first submission. It was changed in the second, and part of that dialogue was the number needs to be increased. We need to be more aggressive with phase 2, and that's an example of the process. So those kind of discussions went on throughout the entire period from the time we submitted the first plan till the time the clock ran out 2 nights ago. Clock ran out in a sense is 30 days after it's been submitted. Nobody's vetoed this approved plan. As someone who's been nominated and confirmed twice in the past 3 years, they normally get dealt with at the end of the legislative process. So we're approaching that, and we expect that to happen in this case with all the outstanding board nominations that are in place. So it's following the pattern that it has followed in the past. We're approaching the end of the legislative session, and that's when it gets dealt with. Hi, Kate. Very good. Well, I'll rewind and then fast forward. We committed that we would do outreach. We committed that we would have a number of large public meetings. We've done 2 of those public meetings. We have another one tomorrow out in Canarsie. The primary focus in the first 2 meetings were people that were immediately adjacent to the Canarsie tubes in Brooklyn and Manhattan. Now it's the far outer end of the line because it's important to them too. And we've also committed to meet at a community board level. And we're staying with that course. If you could slide over a little bit, Jose, so I could see Kate. Otherwise, I'd be speaking to your stomach. And so we've committed to that course, and we want to remain committed to that course. So, and like when we do public hearings on fares and tolls, we're listening to comments from people and factoring that in the analysis to make an informed decision. So we're appreciative of the comments we hear not only at the public meetings themselves, but we're also appreciative of the follow-up that we hear in the news media and by others with respect to how they're receiving that information and what their comments are. But it's still too early to tell that we're tilting one way or another. They're very informative meetings, and we are going to use that information to make an informed decision. Sounds trite, but that's really what we're committed to, and we're staying the course.
I have a question. Tom, what did you think about the commenter talking about adding flexibility to the subway system by creating switching station? Is that doable, or have you thought about that?
I'd have to take a look at the details of the specific proposal the gentleman had. This is probably one of the most interoperable systems in the world. On a daily basis, we make decisions if there are major delays on the east side IRT to send trains over the west side IRT, major delays on 6th Avenue to send them over 8th Avenue. And it's something that is one of the jewels of the system. It is something nobody else has. And to look at ways where we can enhance it, I'd look at it. But the system is very flexible with the number of crossovers it has and its ability to reroute trains. The issue of short-turning a train and sending it back to the center part of the system is not a threshold you cross lightly. Because when you terminate that train and don't send it through its terminal, the people that gain an advantage of that are balanced up against the people who see a disadvantage because the train doesn't go out there and pick them up. So it's not a threshold you cross lightly. With a major service delay, we do that fairly regularly. If you ride the system, you've seen it. But I'd take a look at it. But the system is, by far, the most interoperable system in the world. Thank you.